I wanted to start off, though, a very interesting story that has emerged today in the British press, and I'll put it up on the screen. One of the tweets that really relates to the article here, that a Premier League club thought to be Manchester City, and now a number of other outlets have now confirmed via their sources that it's Man City, is threatening to bring a legal challenge to prevent the adoption of reforms to rules governing associated party transactions amid assuring fairer commercial deals in the top flight. So the Premier League are facing contention over the proposed alterations to this current regulation by Manchester City, who are threatening to take them to court over this circumstance. So what the APT regulation essentially is, it's ensuring that if you're sponsored by if Man United becomes sponsored by Ineos, it has to still be in line with market value. Man United cannot have a shirt sponsor from Ineos, which is worth double, 3 times the amount that Barca or Madrid or Liverpool get. That would be outside market value. It's to ensure that doesn't happen. Equally, it will ensure that Man United, if we want to sign Todibo in the summer from Nice, we're going to have to pay a price within a market racket range. We can't just sign in for £5 million where it would cost everybody else 50 million. So the Premier League want to make these rules stricter. They want to make them harder to break due to multiple clubs being owned by different parties. But so 6 clubs have voted against the current changes. That's to be said, including Man City. But it's Man City that have reportedly threatened the Premier League with legal action. Now, I want to ask you a question based off this, Sam. If Man City have not contravened the ATP regulations and are unequivocally innocent of the 115 charges levied against them, and all the money they've raised, all the sponsors are legit, all the companies are playing within market value, what rationale would prompt concern from them regarding the increased stringency of the ATP regulations? So if they've done everything right, why are Man City worried and threatening to take them to court, in your opinion?
City fans love me, to be honest with you. I'm the City fan favorite rival. Like at this point, it's just like, I love the fact that like anytime there's like City news, it's me.
It
And
always comes on Friday.
I'll say one thing about myself is like, one thing about Hussam, and I'll speak a third person, is I'm not afraid to voice my opinion. I'll just say my honest opinion, regardless. I just don't care, to be honest with you. Some people want to half-ass it and shit. I don't half-ass it. Listen. Look, the Savio thing happened obviously 2 days ago, and this is a part of it because there's 2 parts of this question: the sponsorship thing, and basically the owning multiple clubs thing. Now, I've already said this on my channel multiple times before. I've said this on the Football Terrace 100 times before as well. This whole multi-channel thing, multi-club thing, I think is a little bit, counterproductive in terms of like there always will be a priority from the ownership group perspective. So obviously the Chelsea owners, their priority is Chelsea, not Strasbourg. The Man City owners, their priority is Man City, not Girona. And you could use multiple examples of multiple clubs, obviously, that have same thing. I think Sheffield have a club as well, like the owners own as well, something like that on the side. Actually, the 6 clubs that voted against this, I checked this. All 6 clubs have the same exact, basically. All 6 clubs that voted against it have also the same thing as Manchester City, which is like they own multiple clubs. Well, these smaller clubs that we don't care about, obviously, like myself and people in the chat and shit, they don't care about Strasbourg, but Strasbourg also has a fan base. It also has people who watches it. It also have people who go to the stadium to support Strasbourg, obviously caring about said football club, which I think it's unfair to the smaller club. I think with the Savio example, with the Girona example, the reason why I think it's counterproductive, what happens if Girona and Manchester City are in the same Champions League group? What happens if there's a player like Savio who doesn't want to move to Manchester City? What if he wants to move to Liverpool? What if Savio preferred club is Liverpool Football Club? Will Girona make that happen? No, they will not, because Liverpool are a direct rival to Manchester City, competing for the same trophies. As another example, this is why I think this whole like owning multiple clubs thing is just. I think it's counterproductive to the aim of elite sport, which is winning, because eventually you're going to compete. So if Strasbourg were ever good enough, Nice were ever good enough, Girona were ever good enough, alongside the quote unquote parent clubs, and they all met in the same competition, then what happens? What if Strasbourg and Chelsea are in the same Champions League group? What if Nice and Manchester United are in the same Champions League group? These things, they matter, you guys. Look, agendas aside, this is not just a City thing. I'm talking general football before, because the City fans, they love to bitch. I'm talking generally here. And I'm so glad Terry used the Todibo example, because this is another example here. Let's say in the summer, Xabi Alonso becomes Liverpool manager. Okay. Todibo's like, you know what? Liverpool are in the Champions League. I want to join Liverpool Football Club. If Ineos blocks that move, is it not counterproductive to the aim of elite sport? Is it not counterproductive to the aim of the actual thing that's happening? And also, how do we know if the in terms of like the price tag, how do we know if it's a thing that doesn't take the piss? So if I want to sign a player from Strasbourg, let's say I have to pay 40 million. But if Chelsea want to sign a player from Strasbourg, they can just say he costs 10 million or something, and it's okay. So I feel like this whole club model, I don't think it works. And look, Salzburg and Leipzig proves it as well,
But
because
I think,
they meet in the
I
Champions
think that's
League.
the point. I think that's the point of the regulation reform, is that there's a way you can make it work, but you have to ensure that it's fair. You have to ensure that if there's a player that Strasbourg have signed and he has a brilliant 2 seasons and Chelsea want him, they have to pay a market rate for him.
Yes.
They can't just pay a subsidiary amount. I also think when it comes to the sponsorship side of things, this is key, because there are no accusations of Nike, Adidas, Mercedes, BMW, McDonald's, to name just a few. There's no accusations of these companies sponsoring an English or a European football team and paying so far above market value for that particular club. The accusations are all coming from companies, generally speaking, very closely connected to the owner or senior board members of these football clubs, and they are all paying extortionate amounts of money for companies that we don't see see them on a shirt or the arm or a banner at the club. We don't see them anywhere else. And the idea is they're meant to become these global brands because of their sponsorship, but they're not. And I think it has to be looked at, because at the same time, it's the hole that it could create in football if we're not careful. An example I'll give you is this. Let's say, for instance, let's take it away from Man City. I think City fans don't even view this as a protection for themselves as well. Because let's just say Brighton, who, by the way, are part of a multi-club package themselves.
Yes.
Let's say Brighton get taken over tomorrow by an American billionaire. And the American is like, I'm going to go, and they get rid of all FFP regulations. And he says, listen, I own a big brand in America. I don't know. I own Bloomingdale's. I don't know how rich the guy that owns Bloomingdale's is, but let's just say it's Bloomingdale's. We've all heard of them. And Bloomingdale's are going to sponsor the stadium, and they're going to sponsor the shirts, and it's going to be a £500 million a year sponsorship deal. It now means Brighton have as much money as everybody else, and they rack up hundreds of millions of pounds a year in transfer debt. They rack up hundreds of millions of pounds a year in salary debt because they've got to pay those contracts. And for the next 2 years, they grow and they get better and they challenge for the Prem, and it's amazing. Then that American drops down dead, or then that American gets bored and walks away, or then that American gets arrested for doing something wrong in his states and all his money gets frozen, and there's no more money for Brighton, and they've got hundreds of millions of pounds worth of debts. Someone could theoretically buy the club for a penny, but are they going to write those debts off? Are they going to be able to maintain sponsorship deals at that level? No, because they're above market value. If the new owner comes in and he can get new deals, but the sponsorships have to be within market value, the same things could happen to that owner, and he's not the owner anymore. But a new owner can come in and still generate that same amount of money because it's within market value. And I understand that people view this as a way of stopping teams progressing. I get people view it as a tool to stop the fun. Oh, you're stopping all the fun, Terry. Let the fans enjoy it. But I still think more people would end up in trouble than not. If you go to a nightclub, I'm not sure if you've ever been to a nightclub, Sam. I know you're, a man that follows his religion closely. But if you go to a nightclub, you'll always get a group of people that get a bit drunk. and they try and get up on the table or the chairs and dance. And the door staff and the security within a nightclub will always tell you to get down because it isn't safe. Now, in the moment when you're a bit drunk, you always think they're being killjoys. But then I worked in a nightclub for a little while, and the amount of people I saw nearly kill themselves by doing stupid things. The doormen were not saying get down because they didn't want you to have fun. They actually didn't want your night to be ruined by you having a bad accident. And that is how I view these regulations. Some clubs will view them as, oh, we could spend more though if they weren't there. But yes, what problems could you get into, though, if you were allowed to run up these huge amounts of debts? And the one thing I'll say about City, bringing it back to them, they may be innocent of everything they've been charged of. I've said that many times before. But this is a terrible look for them. This is a terrible, terrible look. The regulations you've essentially been accused of breaching, that also do with associated parties, i.e. sponsorships connected to your owners and other clubs you're being looked at for the Silvio deal. You're going to basically sue the Premier League over and take them to court. Why? If you've done nothing wrong and you can prove that every sponsorship deal is above board, within market value, you haven't broken any rules on it, no money has been pumped in through the back door by owners. And I also guarantee you within these regulations, and it will come out, they're also probably now going to start asking for proof of funds. So they're now going to probably start asking the clubs to do financial due diligence on these sponsors to ensure that the money isn't coming from places it shouldn't be, both from a money laundering point of view, which is completely fine. Let's make sure that this new energy company that's sponsoring Arsenal, doesn't have a backer that doesn't meet the standards and criteria. But it's also going to be a way of ensuring that an owner isn't ringing up a sponsor and pumping money in through the back. So you may find that clubs don't want that level of transparency. But if so, if you don't want that kind of transparency, the question is why? Again, City may be innocent. I know Sam doesn't think they are. But for me, from an optics point of view, this looks horrendous, mate. This looks horrendous.
Yeah, and the Savio transfer is the same thing. Like, please don't think the Savio transfer, everyone's just going to skip past it. No, everyone's looking at shit like this because shit like this matters. And by the way, you can even use a smaller scale example. Miguel Sanchez, right? He's the Girona manager. He's doing really well. He's overperforming with Girona. What if Arteta gets sacked tomorrow and Arsenal want Miguel Sanchez? Will Girona allow that to happen? As an example, no, they won't, because it's counterproductive for their ownership group. And I think this whole thing needs to be stopped. I don't think an owner should be allowed to own multiple clubs. I just don't think it's a thing, to be honest with you. I think it's just disgraceful. Like, it's just. So the fact that Savio moves to Manchester City only opens up extra cans of worms on their football club. And the fact that, they're the ones that are like, anti it, as you said, and they're the ones that one of the people that are, obviously threatening to like sue and shit like that proves it. So basically Girona could just become City's like smaller club that they either send players on loan to or like buy like talent and send it over to Girona and shit like that. Like, I just think, it's just counterproductive. Girona are looking like they're going to make Champions League. And the question is a genuine question. If Manchester City and Girona end up in the same group, then it's a problem for everyone. Then it's just, what if Manchester City need like a win in the last game day, and they're playing Girona, and like, it's so many conversations, so many kind of worms that opens up. I'm against this for everyone. This is not just a Man City thing. I don't want the Chelsea owners owning Strasbourg as well. I think you should only allowed to own one club. That's it. And with the sponsorship stuff, look, I've already broken this down before. It's basically me buying the Terrace Football Club. If I buy the Terrace Football Club and then my brother sponsors it with his airways company, and then my cousin sponsors it with his chocolate factory, and then my other cousin sponsors it with his TV company, I don't know, whatever. We could just make up any numbers we want, and we could sign the best players we want, and we could do anything we want. So this is why I feel like, obviously FFP was in place for a good reason. And I think FFP needs to be just implemented rightly so. That's the thing. And I think the implementation now with Everton and Forest has made it a court of public opinion thing, and people are going to talk about it 100%. So I think this whole City thing they're just not going to bypass it. Like, I remember last time you mentioned 35 of those charges were basically just not cooperating. So they're going to get charged.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, no, I agree.